Caregiving is a major commitment. It takes a lot of your time, effort, and love, but you don't have to do it all by yourself. The Good Samaritan Society is here to help lighten the load of your caregiving responsibilities. Our compassionate, capable caregivers focus on your loved one's well-being while you take some time to focus on yours. We offer reliable solutions like in-home care and short-term stays. Visit good-sam.com or click to schedule a tour at a location near you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you live from the haunted basement, Death the Show. Live with Chuck Banks and Ghostbait. Brought to you all over the Midwest and around the world. Death the Show, Odyssey Radio Network. Grab some popcorn, folks, a cup of Joe, and cozy up as we get ready for Death the Show. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the views of the host, the Odyssey Radio Network, nor Death the Show. Let's welcome Chuck Banks and Ghostbait. Death the Show, baby. Bring it on. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, we're live, and you're listening to Death the Show with Chuck and Ghostbait. And you know what? We got a great guest tonight, and you're listening on the Odyssey Radio Network. Tonight we have Caden Mattinson. He's a medium and paranormal investigator from Salt Lake City, Utah. Caden runs the Life of Utah Medium podcast and does live Facebook updates on his page every Monday to discuss the paranormal. Updates on Mending Minds Village, his nonprofit mental health organization, and updates on his life and other topics. Caden has been doing readings and investigations for the past 15 years and loves helping the clients he has worked with. Caden does medium readings and private paranormal investigations full-time and is working with a couple of reading platforms as well as working privately. If you'd like to book a reading or would like more information, please contact him through his Facebook page, The Life of a Utah Medium. Man, Caden, I'm excited to have you on. I know that we're having some technical difficulties with Ghostbait, but you know what? We're going to be just fine because he's going to let me know when he has a question. Caden, hey, man, 15 years. I've been doing this a long time too, but I'm here to tell you, man, the paranormal really chooses you. You don't really choose it, right?
That's right.
Tell us a little bit, about how you got involved in this 15 years ago.
My grandfather passed away in 2003, and one of the really first experiences that I had that kind of got things rolling was coming into the house and having the man I knew to have been gone for 5 years sitting on my couch in my living room. And it made me kind of, really step back and think, man, am I just that tired, or have I just had a long day? And then about a month later, we started having some pretty nasty activity in the home. And so, I reached out to a paranormal team local here in Utah and explained the situation to him, told him what I was going through, and got told kind of two answers. One, look, you have a gift that a lot of people don't really have and don't use. And two, this pretty crazy activity for somebody to handle coming into it brand new.
Yeah, I always have, like when my loved ones or my friends pass, it's like they show up a few days beforehand.
Yeah.
It's really quite strange. And I kind of got into it, with what I've been doing for the last several years. Really kind of came into my own after my father passed away. And anytime that you reach out, sometimes things aren't as what they appear. Yeah,
Right.
you know what I'm saying. So
Yep.
sometimes they aren't the loved ones. Is that kind of what you're talking about as far as kind of the nastier activity hitting?
Yeah. So it really kind of came down to, we had an entity in the home that was mimicking my grandfather and trying to get us comfortable with him being in the home, and then it ended up actually being borderline demonic.
Yes, and well, I'm here to tell you that my feelers are up, Caden, and what's interesting is similar stories, man, are always intrigued me.
Yeah.
And when I was reaching out trying to bring back Death the Show, because I always comment Death the Final Frontier and all that good stuff, but
Yeah.
There's definitely something beyond, and it's always interesting to hear your stories. Now, have you ever had a near-death experience in your life?
I have, but not before that. Actually, it came a couple years after that. And so I've had I've had two. I had a hospital here in Utah that I went into with pneumonia and started crashing on them while they were just trying to do basic labs. And then I had a hospital in Georgia that actually killed me, and they had to save me.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm going to mute and you mute, and we're going to let Brian ask his first question.
Sounds good.
You put me on the spot, Chuck. Let's see. Chuck, you put me on the spot here, buddy. You still hear me, Caden? Okay. So as an investigator, have you ever run into your father? Have you chatted with him, spirit box or anything like that?
Yeah. So actually, my grandfather, he has become kind of one of my primary spirit guides at this point, and he comes with me quite frequently, especially if we go on heavier cases. We will, even before I know that we've got a case coming up, he'll kind of start showing up. We'll start getting random smells, or I'll just see him somewhere off in the distance. And then I'll start warning the team that I'm like, hey, we got something nasty coming, because he's back.
Yeah, and I'm gonna jump in. Sorry to put you on the spot there, Brian. Man, I saw your face and I thought you were going to ask that question. I know he's saying something in the background. And folks, if you're listening, we apologize. Techno difficulties is nothing new when it comes to Death the Show. So I'll just throw that out there. I'm going to dig in, because obviously you had to almost hit rock bottom to get where you're at right now, because your energy is really good, Caden. And what did it take? And when did you finally hit that point of rock bottom?
It really took about a decade, honestly, to hit that spot. Kind of the year that I hit it, went through a nasty divorce. We lost a bunch of family. My wife and I actually were talking about it the other day, and I think over about a 3-month window, we lost 18 people. And so it was a lot to handle, going through that, plus a divorce, plus kids struggling, became homeless, and all kinds of stuff all happened at the same time. And that was about 5 years ago. And, after I hit that, it was just like, okay, something's got to change. I'm obviously looking at everything the wrong way. And so I really tapped in with some friends, tapped in with the team that I'm working with, and really kind of had that come to Jesus meeting, and was like, I've got to start hitting this hard. I mean, there's obviously a reason that I'm restarting. And then I did. Then we restarted everything, started from scratch, kind of going back to the basics, which is a good idea for anybody. And once I had done that, I got in contact with a couple of good friends back east. Got in touch with some friends here, and really kind of just hit it off. And at that point, decided that's when I was going to start the life of a Utah medium, because you get, I've heard a lot of people ask the question of, well, you're doing these medium readings, life must be just peachy. And I'm like, quite the opposite. I was like, let's talk about it. Let's kind of share the story. And the more that I did that, the more like people were definitely wanting to hear more about it.
I look back and, I had to find my own center of faith and,
Yep.
And development that way. What type of faith do you utilize the center? Because you have to protect yourself any time that you utilize these tools.
You do. So, I just say I'm spiritual. The thing I've learned in communicating with spirits from all faiths, I mean, I've talked to people across the board, from atheist all the way to Catholic to Buddhist to everything, and kind of you just find the general, general faith. I mean, even atheists eventually find out what's really out there, and those conversations are always interesting.
There's a lot of people that would call those types of spiritualists maybe chaos magicians or something similar.
Yeah. I mean, I have people come to me, especially being here in Salt Lake City, where we're in the home of the Mormon Church, and they have a very strict faith, belief system when it comes to death. And if you die, you go to a certain place, and if you've done X, Y, and Z, you go straight to hell. There's no way to come back. And I have people from that religion that come to me all the time, and they're like, "Hey, I'm not understanding, because my whole life I've always been taught that this can't happen, and if it does, this is just evil." And I'm like, okay, but your grandmother or grandfather or your parents were with you in life, and now they're letting you know that they're still with you in death. So help me understand the line there of where it becomes evil. If they're still letting you know that they're supportive, then I think that to me definitely does not cry out evil.
Well, and let's face it. How hard was it for you to come out of your shell and say, "Hey, I'm a medium"? Because that's tough.
It took me until about 6 months into it, when the house really got crazy. It started to get really, really dark, and we definitely needed to get something done. And at that time, I was living at home, and went and was having a conversation with my mom about it. And I was like, "Look, I got to be straight up with you. Like, this is what I'm going through. I'm witnessing these things. I call it a medium, call it a psychic, whatever you want at this point, but I am witnessing this, and we need to get it dealt with." And that sparked a whole lot of questions.
And the questions are continuous.
Oh yeah. Once the first kind of conversation about that came out, we didn't really talk about it after that. I tested myself. I went and did some research on how to ground and how to protect yourself, and I did all of that kind of work myself. And then it was about another 6 months or so after that, that we were all kind of hanging around with friends and family, and I got asked again, "Well, what's this that I hear that you can talk to dead people?" And I said, "Well, I do, and I've been doing it for a while now. At this point, it's been a year." And, so of course the questions come up. Okay, well, if you can do that, then tell me who this person is, or tell me what this person has to say. And that actually led down a really interesting road where I got to start working with law enforcement. And one of the first questions that was asked after the talk to my best friend or talk to my grandpa or whatever those questions were, the first real big question was, what do you get on this specific case? And it's a case that has gotten national attention. It's been, I want to say, 25 years or 28 years now since the murder actually happened. But it's the Kipling Davis case. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But a young girl, high school girl here in Spanish Fork, Utah, about an hour south of me, just disappeared after school one day and has never been heard from, seen, found ever again. And as soon as I got asked, well, what do you pick up on this case? It was almost like an instant connection. And so I immediately called the detective on the case. I'm like, if I'm getting this much information, there's no way this, none of this is in the news. It's not anything that's been broadcasted. So if it's this solid, this loud, I'm going to definitely relay the information. Whether it makes me look crazy to the police or not, I guess we'll see what happens.
How did they come to you? Do you see it? Do you see it like through a third eye? Do you feel it? Do you hear it? I mean, how does it come to you?
Each one is different. So I've had every kind of tune in imaginable. I have heard, I have seen. Sometimes I get really random ones that are smell only, and then I don't really get much out of them. I have had, especially in the middle of readings, if I'm not understanding what I'm being told, then I experience the method of death. And that's always interesting.
Yeah, very, very interesting. So I'm going to put Ghostbait on the spot. So we're going to mute, and I'm going to bring him in here.
All right.
All right. So let's see. I've been thinking on this. So me and Chuck had an interesting conversation yesterday about that there's people out there that think that all spirits are evil, okay, or demonic or whatever. And I said back to him, I says, well, they say that after death that you are what you were in life. If you're a great person, you're a great spirit. If you were mean, you're mean. So then on that thought, that saying there's people that say that all spirits are evil, I suppose you could say every once in a while a evil spirit has a good day.
That's actually an interesting thought. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, they really are. That your grandpa, your uncle, your best friend, they're going to come through the same way when they pass as they were when they were alive. How else are you going to know who they are? I had that conversation on another interview, and I said, honestly, the amount of negative or demonic spirits that I've run into over 15 years makes up maybe 1% of the normal cases. And even when you think they're evil, when you first go into the case, a lot of spirits, especially if you go into, an insane asylum or into a hospital where they had a traumatic death, those spirits are not going to be happy about it. They're the same way as they were when they were alive. And I think, I don't know if you watch Kindred Spirits, but I think that Amy and Adam and Chip did a fantastic job on the season finale, explaining that there are, communication things. It's not always that the spirit wants you to leave. It may be that you're not doing the communication the way that they are used to it in life.
Do you ever get like a spirit coming up to you, Cade, and it's like, hey, all these people are asking dumb questions, ask the same dumb question all the time.
All the time. Yeah, and you go on cases where 3 or 4 different paranormal teams have been there, and they've all been trying to figure out the case, and they call up their buddies and say, hey, bring your team in because I can't help this case. I don't understand. And we go into it, and we're like, well, yeah, because you're accusing them of being demonic or being, awful, when it's a drunk uncle who he's just been negative his whole life. And you relay that information to the family and the activity stops.
Now I gotta dive into this rabbit hole because obviously it's called Death to Show. Now, over the course of your 15 years,
Uh-huh.
what do the spirits say about the afterlife? What is it like? Is there a heaven? Is there a hell? Is there a purgatory? I mean, what are you picking up?
Yeah, so I get kind of mixed statements. I've heard generally about three different ways of crossing or passing away. The most common being the great white light. It gets, matter of fact, I had one in a group reading a couple weeks ago that told me before they went, they couldn't understand why the room was so bright. They still hadn't passed yet, but they were really, really confused about all of the lights. Their family was telling them all the lights were off. They were just laying in it, it was almost dark, and they were laying in a dark room, and they were like, no, this room is way too bright. And then about an hour and a half later or so, they finally passed away. And the guy kept telling me how bizarre that was. The white that we see even as energy workers when we're doing property cleansings or working on somebody, trying to remove some negativity from somebody, we can't comprehend the brightness of that light. We understand about 10% of it.
Ghost bait, we're gonna mute. You better be ready. Here we go.
I'm not used to this yet. This is my first time ever doing something like this. But anyway, so that's another thing with our conversation is that that spirits are all stuck in purgatory, that they're evil and they can't cross. I don't believe that at all because I've seen it firsthand. I've helped spirits cross along with Chuck and myself. It's definitely a emotional situation. Felt a lot of things. I'm not empathic or medium or nothing like that. I'd say I'm probably sensitive because I can definitely feel when I walk into a location what it feels like, the pressure, and that there's stuff there. But as far as there being that all spirits are evil, I don't believe that at all.
Okay, we were having that conversation, Caden, about purgatory, and basically what I was kind of describing is the Catholic faith, which is probably the closest representation of kind of my methodology and how I work.
Uh-huh.
And again, everybody else works different ways, but so it's purgatory there, and a lot of people like Conchetta Bertatelli. I used to talk to her. She talked about an astral plane or different levels of existence. I think that's what we were kind of talking about there.
Yeah, and the way I've kind of seen it, we're never really going to know until we make that journey. But just the visions and the things that I've seen, it's almost. I mean, obviously they're all still here. Hell is very much right here next to us. I mean, if you could see the lines and see the veil, if you will, it's pretty thin. It's pretty thin. It used to be, even 10, 15 years ago, it used to take quite a bit of work to get a spirit to contact. And I don't know if that's just because I wasn't understanding what I needed to, or if I wasn't hearing it right, seeing what I needed to see right. But now, I mean, I could pretty much snap and I can see all kinds of different planes.
About 18 months to 2 years, you had a profound experience. I don't know whether you remember that or not, but do you want to share a little bit about what you remember?
So I remember I was asleep and I had attempted to block everything. It was overwhelming. There was a lot of, a lot of death around, and a lot of spirits that have had different experiences, and so I had tried to block everything. I tried to shut it all off, and Yeah, about that 2-year mark starting to come through, I had a vision. I think it was definitely a dream, but I think it was more vision, where I entered a room, and as soon as I got into the room, there was a chair in the middle of this room, and it was almost like a spotlight all over that room. And nothing had been said, but I knew I needed to sit down. And so I sat in that chair, and I heard a voice that I had never heard before. And and a lot of the conversation was, you don't get to get away from this. This is the work that you need to do for life. There are people that you need to help. So when you wake up in the morning, you are going to have visitors. You are going to have spirits with you again. And basically, I'm taking away your mute button. So I hope you're prepared for that. And and I remember the dream feeling like it was quite a while. And I finally looked up and I said, I need to know who you are. I need to know that this is legitimate. And I looked up, and the only thing that I can explain, or the only comparison that I can explain, is I knew that it was St. Michael. There was no doubt. And none of the pictures that I have looked for have ever depicted what I saw. That man was, I mean, there's no way to even describe it.
Well, and too, he's not all white. Yeah, you know
No.
what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Can you?
No, and there's no, I mean, all color, all being, all powerful kind of scratches the surface.
And what do you work with St. Michael quite a bit?
I used to. We used to get a lot of really negative cases. We had a matter of I had a conversation with James Anito, and I was like, why is it that in the most religious state in the country, we deal with so much negativity and borderline demonic cases? We've had 2 cases that we took that were possession, and that's a lot. I mean, 2 possessions over 15 years. That really, for a paranormal team, is a lot to take on.
Do you feel like you have those healing qualities that you're able to interact and remove? I mean, how do you expel, I guess?
Yeah, so I definitely do cleanse and clear. Most of the time, they're not demonic. Most of the time, they're just really pissed off spirits. And so a lot of times asking them to leave is easy enough. But in the cases that we don't get them to leave quite that easy, I will go through and do an energy clear. And then the team will come in behind me, and they will do a salt, cleanse, and a sage. And so we take it triple threat. I'm like, we're not going to leave any traces.
And do you ever do they ever go out screaming? I mean, like
frequently. Yeah, I've had 2 cases in the last 5 years that doing the cleansing, I started to channel, and I started yelling at the team. And of course, I don't remember them. When I go into a channel like that, I black out. And when I come to, the team's looking at me, going, "Are you back yet? Are you good?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm here now. What happened?" And they had one where I got an audio back from somebody's voice recorder, where I'm still to this day. I mean, that was 7 years ago. I'm still missing a good 5 minutes of an investigation.
Now, when you're channeling, do you ask the channel, or is this something where they jump?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I had one case that I channeled a negative entity where I got deceived. I was under the impression that I was speaking with somebody that was not that entity, and I was not understanding the conversation entirely. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to allow you 30 seconds to use me as your, as your voice and relay the message directly to the team that I'm working with. And so I went into my channeling state, and then I came to, and I had all of the team in front of me tapping my shoulder and being like, no, come back. This is a little too much. And it ended up being, the spirit he was real good manipulator.
Did you have a lot of lingering effects after this particular case?
After that one, I did. After that one, I took a break after that one for, I think, like a month, just because I just didn't feel right, and I wasn't going to put the team at risk for it to happen again.
There was a couple of times where I took a break for upwards of a year, and I know that Brian can jump in, especially when I was going through, some of those things. Give me a thumbs up, partner. That's really weird that I'm getting that feedback here, but sometimes that happens, and I know that you're probably feeling some things there.
Yeah, I still, looking back, I actually have the audio on my computer, because I was trying to explain kind of what the tonage was and like the change in the conversation to my wife. And I finally played her the audio. I got the clip of it and played it for her. And my voice in that audio, you can hear me what I remember happening, saying, look, everything. I was, at the time I was doing a reading for a couple that had just lost their son like 3 days before that. And he came through real clear on the investigation, was like, I need them to know that I'm okay. Like, he had committed suicide, and he's like, I'm okay now. I'm not in pain. All that kind of stuff is settled. And all of a sudden it just lights out, just everything, no voices, no visual, nothing. And it was on a location where I knew we had been to 30 times. So I knew everything about the location. I knew where all of the spirits were. I know who they were. And so for me to just blank out that quick, I panicked, because I'm like, I don't know why, but all of a sudden everything's gone. And then you hear my voice slowly drop over about a minute. And I hit a tone that I have tried to hit that tonage again, and I can't hit it.
My goodness. All right. So we're going to mute. Brian, you ready?
So I've been on a couple of clearings with Chuck, and as far as, like I said, me not being empathic or anything like that, it was one heck of an experience. Let me tell you. One we think was Native American, and when we cleared that house, when we moved it through the rooms and stuff, as we were cleansing each room, saying prayers and all that. And when I watched, we ended up in the basement and by the washer and dryer, and there's actually a drain there in the ground, and you can see like the energy, almost like watching water go down a drain. It was crazy. And then we did another one, and that ended up being a djinn. And we chased him from room to room to room until we finally got him basically forced into the kitchen. And then as Chuck cleansed that last room, you could hear him slam the door as he went out the door and never came back. So doing this, I haven't been doing as long as you guys, but been doing it quite a while. And I've seen some amazing things, and great to work with Chuck and the rest of my team. And we've done some pretty crazy stuff.
All right, so I muted I muted Brian there. It's always a fascinating experience anytime that you do those things. Where do you your intent, obviously, when you're dealing with either a mean spirit or a darker spirit, what's your intent, Caden, and what's in your toolbox as far as moving them, to the point where they need to go?
I have kind of come to the understanding that it's not my place to cross spirits. There's a reason that they still stick around. There's a reason that they chose not to cross over yet. And so I go in more with an intent of understanding and also with peace. If I can bring those two things into an environment, a lot of times that's what they're missing. And so I've had spirits that they're like, okay, I understand now. I couldn't understand before, but I get it now. And they'll cross. And, and sometimes it's just relaying to them that, look, just because you go through the light doesn't necessarily mean you can't come back to visit. It doesn't mean that you can't come still be with your family members. Because that's a lot of the anxiety that you run into is, once I go over there, am I allowed to come back? Do I have to stay now?
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, as far as when they show up ahead of time before they're going to pass, is it because they're scared to pass, or I mean, what do you pick up on those types of things?
Yeah, in my experience, and I've heard a few different things on that, but the ones that have come to me before they pass, that's mostly it's fear of not knowing what it's gonna be like, and it's also really kind of confusion about why they know that they're still alive per se, but they're able to travel freely.
And the one of the most interesting facets is I've read a lot of books. I've done a lot of exploring and investigating when it comes to this stuff. Now, what about the people that believe in reincarnation, and they're afraid that when they pass in this life, that they're not going to be able to experience being around their family members or their friends again at that point.
I'm still kind of researching on that, because I have seen two different sides of that. I have seen the spirits where they talk about existing again, but I'm still able to communicate with them, and I don't understand how that works. But I definitely have an understanding and a belief of past lives. We've had too many experiences with kids lately that it definitely makes you think and understand a previous existence.
And coming from the Western civilization, types of things, we're not excuse me, all that inclined as far as when you're looking at it's almost dogmatic when you look at our civilization versus the Eastern philosophy and that train of thought. How do you talk to a person that might be a little bit closed-minded when it comes to that dogmatic practice, and help them understand that hey, this is kind of what I'm picking up?
Really, it's getting on their plane, and we can talk about that from the living and the deceased. The living, I really enjoy my clients that are very skeptical, that try to be closed-minded. I had this conversation a week ago. We had a group where one of the ladies walked in and said straight from the beginning, "I'm just here to watch this unfold." And I said, okay, I understand that, it happens frequently. And she said, it's not because I don't trust you, but I don't believe in this kind of thing. And she was my most read client. Out of the whole group, she had 4 or 5 people come through. And when all was said and done, she came up and looked at me at the end and she was like, I don't know what you just did. It doesn't make sense.
Or when they're crying and they're angry, and yeah, what I'm saying.
Yep.
Anytime that those conversations can take place, I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's quite remarkable. Now, what do you see? How many planes of existence are there, or is it different for everybody?
I've seen. Well, okay, so I have personally seen 10 different planes, but I'm told frequently that the planes are unlimited and that new planes are being created all the time.
That's extremely deep, Caden. I'm just going to throw that out, and I'm not making fun of it or anything.
No.
Like that, but it's so deep, and when you look down a rabbit hole like that, what's the differences in planes that you kind of see?
Some of it's energy level. Some of it is, kind of groups or cliques or kind of the same thing in life. You experience a lot of the same thing on the other side where the empaths would be on one plane. Clairvoyance would be on one. Scientists or, a whole field full of, variety of careers or personalities or any of that kind of thing. I mean, they can all be on separate planes, but be in the same room.
Do we manipulate our own plane? What
Yes.
we foresee as heaven or what we foresee as hell?
Yes. Yeah, entirely. And I have been told, I mean, I have personally seen my vision or my, I guess, experience of hell. And I, from what I was told, is that it was a percentage. It was not the real place, but that percentage was enough for me to know I never want to be there.
Can you share kind of your smells and your just sense?
The smells were constant, like every bad thing that you could think of to smell in the same smell. Rotting flesh, fluids, rotting fruit, sewage, the sulfur smells, all of it, all combined into one smell.
What forces a person to go to hell?
There's been really two kind of classes, two levels of spirits that I've run into. So murderers, if you're willing to take a life, then you very well may end up in hell. And then the other one being any kind of child abusers, that kind of thing. If you're willing to hurt another soul with no remorse, you're going to end up in purgatory.
Do you believe that it's possible to get out of hell, or do you believe that?
Yes,
okay.
I do. You get a lot of these like serial killers. I think serial killers will end up in hell. The reason being is they have no remorse. They have no emotion towards it. And of course, we've seen some interviews where they brag about it. I believe that if you, and I've seen it, I've witnessed, there was a guy that came to me, I want to say 3 or 4 years back, that his son had killed somebody. He was part of a gang and he had murdered somebody just out of cold blood. And he was terrified that he was in hell, that he was not in a good place. And I ended up talking to him and I said, no, he's not in hell. He kind of stayed in what you would think of like a holding cell, I guess. And had his hearing, had his eternal hearing, and got to plead his case.
And I'll tell you what, with my past and and my beliefs and centered, heaven is very striking, but hell is not very striking. All right, so we're going to mute, and Ghost Bait's coming on here.
All right. I'm stuck again. You got to quit doing that to me, Chuck. You got to quit doing that to me. I'm just sitting here listening to you guys, fascinated. As far as a heaven and a hell, I believe in heaven and hell. I'm Catholic, of course. But at the same time, I don't know. It's hard to explain, I guess, myself. I hate being Chuck.
Well, it's it is what it is, my friend. And right now we're sitting about 9 minutes left in our broadcast, and I haven't even reached out to Caden to find out. Hey, man, I mean, you do this for a living. Is this a full-time gig?
It is. So I used to not do it full time, and another one of those. I had a vision. I had a visit from whichever angel it was. I don't know for sure who it was, But
Was it burial?
it very well could have been. I've had that visit before, where I had been meditating the night before, and I said, look, every job I have ever tried to hold, every business I've tried to put together has ended up failing. We had a towing business for 2 years, and it just collapsed around me. And I'm like, I can't go back to work. I'm not going to have another failed job. I'm not going to start bringing income in and then lose it again. So show me what I need to do, whether it's through a dream or through a conversation, show me. And then I got shown a dream that night of being in crowds, speaking to crowds, and running a show and having a microphone in front of me. And then I got shown being in a room full of energy and all different colors. And I kept hearing the words perfect light, perfect light. And I'm like, okay, I understand. I understand what you're showing me. And the next morning I woke up and I said, okay, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to trust the guides. I'm going to trust the spirits, trust the archangels, and I'm just going to run it full time. And it took about 2 weeks to get everything up and running and get everything together. And, now here we are a month in, and it's just absolutely running itself. The spirits are definitely running the show.
So, Caden, are your goals like to be the future John Edwards or something like that, or a Chip Coffey? I mean, what are you looking for?
I would love to be to that level. Just the amount of people that they're able to address, the amount of people that they're able to help daily, that would be amazing. But if my job is to help 4 or 5 people a week and just run the show and spread the information, then I'm good with that too.
Now, what are your fees? Because obviously you do this for a living.
Yep. So I charge basically $1 a minute. So I do $30 for a half an hour, $60 for an hour, and I don't set I don't set a guarantee on any readings. If you come in expecting grandpa and I contact your friends and your aunt, I try to let people know I let the spirits run the show. So if they've got a more important message for you, then that's what you're going to get.
I do get a feeling that you've had a hard time concentrating during this interview.
A little bit. It's been a little distracting.
Yeah, not necessarily Ghost Bait's mute issue, right?
Right.
And we can't hear his laugh right now, which it's amazing.
He is dying.
But no, it's always interesting anytime that you get into a similar facet. And I don't know whether you can hear that or not, folks, but there's no way that you can be hearing that kind of breathing on my device. But
no,
there is someone here, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, you actually have several. I feel like your house is kind of a hot spot, and so a lot of your technical issues come from some of that as well.
Yes. And it's very much so. And I won't ask you to. I won't. You know what? Tell me the most pronounced spirit that's with me right now. And I just heard him again. So
yeah. So I've had 2 come through very, very prominently, and it's feeling more one for you, and then and then one for the other side of the equation as well. But for you, I'm hearing Father, and I feel like he's with you frequently. And I feel like his passing for you. I mean, you've had quite a bit of loss in your life, and by far he's the most traumatic. Your relationship with him was not a relationship to take lightly. He was there for you in unimaginable times.
Absolutely. And when you look at Gerald Banks, and I'll just say his name, he was in law enforcement for several years. Just to give you a little background.
Yeah.
Of course, you can already see
you can see the badge. He wears the badge proudly.
Yeah. and he was very quiet and funny and loud, but sometimes he was just damn mean, Caden. You don't people don't understand what it's like to be the sheriff's kid, right?
Yeah. Good luck getting away with anything.
Yeah, but I get the strange feeling, Caden, that he's protected my kids
Very much.
and myself quite a bit. He's kind of my spiritual go-to warrior.
Yeah, and there's times that he's been there when you could have lost your life, and your kids could have easily lost theirs as well, and he's been there to intervene.
Yeah, and when we get done, like 2 or 3 minutes, I'll fill you in on a couple of those things. But we're sitting about 3 minutes away here, and it's crazy that it goes this fast. You're listening to Depth the Show with Chuck and Ghostbait on Odyssey Radio, folks. If you don't understand Odyssey Radio, you got to check it out. It's just phenomenal content. Rocky Stucci and his partner are doing some amazing things. Now, Caden, but before we get down here to the end, and yes, I just heard you come through. Okay. But before we get down here at the end, let everybody know where they can get a hold of you. The easiest method.
Yeah, the easiest way to get a hold of me is on the Facebook page, The Life of a Utah Medium. You can message me on there. I've got my podcasts run through there. I do my podcast hosting on Podomatic, which is I've loved that platform. I just recently switched about a month ago from Anchor over to Podomatic, and the difference is night and day.
100%. And, folks, you're listening to Depth the Show again on Odyssey Radio Network. We appreciate you. If you would, if you want to sponsor us, we're definitely looking for sponsors and things like that. We are sponsored tonight by the Cambria House. Yes, I heard you there. The Cambria House, and it's located just across the river from beautiful Fort Madison, Iowa. Folks, we hope that you've enjoyed. Yes, we hope that you've enjoyed this. And we're out of here. And you know what, folks? Make sure that you make the world a better place each and every day. And an act of kindness goes a long way.